Hi, and welcome to the second episode in the series about Time Extender Release 17. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Tobias, and I'm going to walk through 4 features today. 3 of them will have a very large impact on the majority of people using Time Extender and the way you work with TXDWA. And the last one will have a large effect behind the scenes. So I'm very excited about today's installment. Alright, the first feature I want to show you today is data selection templates. So data selection templates is a completely new concept. And what it does is it exports a number of tables, fields, including the primary keys and incremental settings from a data source, exports them so you can import them in another project. So let's look at an example. In this case, I have a data source that contains information about sales for AX. It contains information about sales, sales lines, customers, customer groups, and invoices. And that's all sitting in one data source here. So if I want to export that as a data selection template so I can share it with my client or others, I can do a right click on the data source, choose selection template, and I can export it. I'll give it a name. AX 2012 sales is going to be my template name. So I'm going to save there. I'm going to open up another project that I have. So I have another project here where I can import the template into. This project only has an empty AX data source. It is possible to import across different data sources. So I can export a data selection template from an Oracle data source, import it into SQL, and so on and so forth. So I can right click this data source here, go to selection template, and import. I'll find the file that I exported earlier, import it, and we can see that the tables have been imported. They also preserve settings like incremental load, primary keys. We can also import multiple templates. So I've got another template that I can import here. This is a purchase template. Hit OK. This template has some overlap with the other template, namely the third-party table was part of both templates, but it's only going to import the tables that didn't already exist. So this is, of course, different from importing and exporting projects because it doesn't allow you to import-export things like data cleansing rules, data movements, data quality rules, and many other things. It's just tables from a data source, including primary keys and incremental selection rules. So there's less functionality than in projects, but what it does allow you to do is it allows you to easily merge different data selection templates together in the same project, which is really the main purpose of this. So the next feature I want to show is simple mode. This is something I'm quite excited about. As we know, in all previous versions of Time Extender, or in the new version, if we don't have simple mode enabled, so if simple mode is disabled, the data flow goes like this. The data flows into the raw table, then it is read through a transformation view and into the valid table. So what simple mode does is it simply removes the raw and the raw table and the transformation view, and it just loads the data straight into a valid table. This is particularly useful in a scenario where you have an operational data exchange, an operational data store, or something like that, where you don't want to do any data cleansing in your tables, or if you simply have tables where in your staging area where you don't want to do any data cleansing on the table, then you can enable simple mode. There's of course all data cleansing and data quality features are disabled when you use simple mode. Incremental load is enabled, so if you hear source-based incremental load enabled, there will be a raw table and a valid table, but no transformation view. So data cleansing and data quality rules are still disabled. To see how this works, we're going to go ahead and go back to the same project again, and we're going to go to the table settings for the cust table. And on this table, we're going to enable simple mode. It's going to give us an error here. We need to disable the truncate valid before data cleansing setting here. Going to hit OK, and we're going to deploy and execute the customer table. The project wants to add a couple of tables to the deployment. I assume that's the incremental table above. The deployment takes place, and if we go back and look at the tasks here, we can see that the cust table only had one deployment step. It was deploying the simple mode table structure. When we preview the table, we can see that there's only the valid table here. If we enable the same setting on the incremental table, and we deploy and execute this table, we will see that this table has a valid and a raw table, and of course the incremental table that holds the last max value of the incremental key on the table. So those are the two options. Often we'll set this setting either at the data source level, so here we can enable simple mode for this data source, or at the business unit, which will also inherit to the data source level. One thing to know is that in the current version, if you enable simple mode on the data source level on tables that are already in the project, you'll see that the simple mode is enabled on the table, but the truncate valid before data cleansing is this is to ensure that we don't disable any functionality that you might be needing. So that means that if you do want to use simple mode, the best way is to enable it on the business unit or on the data source before you start adding your tables in, because as we can see, if we add a new table on this data source, all of the settings are set correctly. So try and make the decision about using simple mode as early as possible. In this version of DWA, you can use simple mode on tables that are loaded straight from the data source. So it is not possible to do in a data warehouse database on custom tables. It is something that's available for the tables that are loaded from the data source straight. This is something I'm very excited about, because there has been times where we've previously had to go through too many unnecessary steps in the cleansing when we've implemented operational data exchanges, and that goes away with simple mode. The next feature I'm going to talk about might be the one I'm the most excited about. This is the raw only fields, and while it seems like a small thing, it turns out that the potential impact is quite significant. So I've put up a little example here where we can just see how the feature is going to work. In this example, we have a sales table, a sales transaction table, where we're bringing in an amount field from the data source. We then do a lookup of an exchange rate, bring that on to the sales table, and that's going to happen in the raw table. That's the first step of the data cleansing, and then we do a calculation where we take the amount and multiply that with the exchange rate, and that gives us the amount in USD that happens in the transformation view. The field also exists in the raw table, but the calculation itself takes place in the transformation view. And what the raw only field setting allows us to do is it allows us to set the amount and the exchange rates field as raw only fields and not show up in the valid table. So this can be used for a few things. Some of the lighter usage may be that we, in our data warehouse, due to sequence and other little technicalities, we might do a couple of lookups in our data warehouse. We might do circuit key lookups in the data warehouse or something similar. And we would like to hide the natural keys that we use for those lookups in the data warehouse so we can use it for that. And another example is what I'm doing here, where we're actually doing proper data cleansing and we're just not bringing the fields onto the V table that we don't need there. So before we talk about some of the potential implications of this, let's look at an example. Right, so we'll go back to the project from before. I'll create my sales table here. I'm going to populate this out of the sales line table, and here I'm going to look for the, let's see, the line amount. The line amount field, I'm going to bring that into the sales table. And then I'm going to add in this case, we're just going to add a custom field. This is going to be exchange rate. This would be a lookup field in most cases. In this case, I'm just going to give it a fixed transformation. So this is going to be 7.2. Then we're going to create another field. This is going to be the line amount USD. This is going to contain another transformation. This is going to be a custom transformation, which is exchange rate multiplied with the line amount. And what we can do here then is we can set this to be a raw only field and this field to be a raw only field. So only the line amount USD is going to show up in the table. And when we preview the table, we can see that the valid table only contains the line amount USD and the system fields, whereas the transformation view and the raw table will contain all of the fields. So this gives us a number of different opportunities from an architecture perspective. The current common architectures in version 16 and earlier is one of the two that we see here, where we're loading from our data sources to an operational data exchange, to a data staging area, to a data warehouse, where all of the time extender managed databases are individual databases. Or we we could have the more classical setup where we just have a data staging area and a data warehouse, but where each of them are contained in their own database. Two new possible architectures that we could implement going forward with the raw only fields feature is that we could consider loading from our data source to our operational data exchange, and then loading into a database that contains both the data staging area, which is going to be the raw layer, contains the transformations, which is going to be the T-view, the data cleansing procedures, the M and L tables for data quality, and then the valid tables are really going to be our data warehouse. So that's significantly different from what was possible before, but it is a great option, especially in less complicated implementations. And we also have an even simpler setup for implementations where the operational data exchange may not add much value. We can just load from data source into a single database that holds staging and transformation and the data warehouse in the valid parts of the tables. All we have to do is make sure that the table access is managed by schema security. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this is going to be implemented going forward, and I will be happy to discuss with anyone who has ideas for how it could be done or has concerns about some of these new ways of doing it. Lots of opportunities. I'm sure there's lots that we still have to learn. All right, thank you for watching. I said that I would talk about 4 features today, and I've only talked about 3. It is too late, and I don't have any more energy. You can hear my voice getting slower and slower throughout the video, I'm sure. So the 4th feature, which is improvements to the history algorithm, will be covered in the next video. Thank you so much. Have a good night.